My husband's family hates me and uninvited me to their Christmas plans because I ruined the vibe, so I exchanged their expensive gifts with the worst ones I could find, and used the money to get a divorce instead of trying to mend our relationship. I, 31F, married my soon-to-be ex-husband, 33M, in 2018. My in-laws never liked me and made it clear. He insisted that they're just putting up a tough exterior and they'll grow to love me. To show how evil they are, one time I joined them for dinner and brought a cake I'd made, because I was always raised to be a gracious guest. When I stepped into the kitchen and offered the cake to his mother as a thank you for inviting me, she took the plate over to the garbage bin, dumped it in, and handed me the plate back. When I told my husband what she did, he confronted her and all of a sudden the crocodile tears started and she claimed she grabbed the plate but didn't get a good grip. I let go too quickly, and it fell to the floor, so of course it had to be thrown away. My sister-in-law confirmed that was what happened. My STBX owned his own business, and they called me a gold digger behind his back. Of course, they insisted on a prenup, which I didn't care about because I never thought my marriage would end and it would appease them and may allow them to finally treat me kindly. Nope. His business failed once COVID hit. We went through his savings and my own trying to keep it afloat. I refused to go into debt to keep it going, so he closed it down. In 2022, he was suffering from really bad depression because he lost his business and couldn't find new work. He suggested we move to his hometown, closer to his family, so he had a larger support network. Against my best judgment, we did. He wanted to only work part-time while he tried to restart his business, so I became the main breadwinner. And as with most wives, I became the person in charge of buying gifts. Stupid old me thought buying them thoughtful, expensive gifts would finally make them see I wanted to be accepted by them. Gifts to us were a couple's gift but clearly for my STBX only. Every holiday was spent with them. Monthly dinners with the whole family. After a year, I realized that if I ever tried to talk or join a conversation, everyone would go quiet, so I just stopped talking when I visited. In early December they finalized plans for Christmas. A few days later my STBX said his family decided they didn't want me to join them for Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas lunch because I ruined the family vibe. I replied, fine, we'll do our own thing instead. My STBX sheepishly looked away and said he was still going to go. I was livid and so disappointed in him. That was the moment I knew my marriage was over. So I returned the presents I had bought for his family. In their place, I got one pair of novelty business socks for Phil, a supermarket brand bottle of shampoo for Mill, the nastiest perfume I could find at the dollar store for Sil. The most expensive gift was a large rawhide bone for Bill and his wife's chihuahua, too big for it to get its jaw around, rendering it useless. I saved about $600 to put on a deposit for a new apartment. My husband come home from Christmas lunch telling me I humiliated him and embarrassed him in front of his family. I asked him why would he think I'd buy nice gifts for people who clearly don't like me and don't want me around? Served divorce papers last week? Remember how he was supposed to be a millionaire by now, so we had that prenup? STBX is not eligible for any of my savings, it was required to keep separate accounts or alimony. He doesn't have money for rent and auto insurance. Not my problem anymore. Some of my friends and family are on my side and proud that I went out in a blaze of glory. Others are telling me I was being way too petty, which isn't really like me. So, am I a jerk? Update 1. Many thanks to everyone for their support in my last post. I thought I'd send a small update. First, for those who asked how the deposit on my new apartment was only the $600 I saved on the gifts, it certainly wasn't. I had to dip into savings, but that $600 helped. My STBX didn't bother reaching out to me after I left until he was served the divorce papers and my lawyer made it clear we're exercising the prenup. Then it was loving voicemails and texts I never picked up from him and his family for a few days trying to convince me to come back, which eventually turned to threatening and cruel voicemails and texts when it was clear I wasn't budging. My lawyer suggested I don't block them so we have evidence of harassment, if needed. Basically, give them the rope to hang themselves with. But then last night I got call after call from my STBX. Stupidly, I picked it up thinking there was some kind of emergency or something. I barely got hello out when he said, "The rent is a week late." I told him that's strange because I paid my landlord 6 days ago. He paused and sighed dramatically and replied, "No, the rent for here." I reminded him I don't live there and he shouldn't expect rent. Cue his parents both texting me that they're going to sue me to pay the remainder of the lease entirely. I'm not worried about having an eviction on my record, since the apartment is in his parents' names. When we first announced we were moving to his hometown, they rented an apartment for us right away so we could move right in. They've been renewing the lease each year. We had to pay his parents and then they write a check to the landlord, who has no idea who STBX and I are, let alone that we live there. Red flag, I know. I'm glad I had a few weeks to prep my leaving since they'd probably use the fact that it's their apartment to kick me out immediately. Divorce is probably going to be a bumpy ride with this manchild and his psycho parents. Any advice from anyone who's been through it is welcome. Update 2. So the people who commented that my soon-to-be former in-laws were probably charging my STBX and me more than the amount on the lease, you called it. And we wouldn't have found out if they weren't so entitled and determined to hurt me. They got a cousin who happens to be a lawyer to send me a letter demanding I pay the entirety of the remainder of the lease or they will file suit and force me to pay it. Clearly a scare tactic. So my lawyer sent a formal request to their lawyer for a copy of the lease, which I've never seen, and a copy of their written agreement with us as subleasees, which doesn't exist. They sent the lease and insisted the sublease agreement was a verbal contract. Not only is subleasing explicitly prohibited, but my mother-in-law and father-in-law had been charging us an extra $200 each month. So we've notified the landlord that I've been living there with my STBX and the leasees were living in their own house throughout the duration of the lease, and sent copies of my driver's license, with the address and over 2 years of bank and credit card statements with the address listed. They were served with a 30-day eviction yesterday, which I know about because Mill left a voicemail about me kicking my STBX out of his home and that she now drives with a baseball bat in her car and she'll be keeping an eye out for me, lol. Obviously, my lawyer's expertise is family law and this was out of her purview, so she referred me to a colleague who focuses on real estate law. We met today to devise a battle plan and I am now suing my mill and Phil for all the money I can prove I transferred for rent for the entirety of the residency there, since the apartment was technically not a legal apartment to rent since they couldn't sublease, no clean hands to rent to us and then sue me. He's not sure how a judge will buy it and it's way beyond my state civil compensation limit, but he's confident that it will scare them and leave them open to settling for just returning the additional $200 from each payment. Which I think is fair, because I did live there with my STBX so I don't think it's right to get all the rent money back. I'm an adult and adults pay rent. And I don't want them to have the satisfaction of saying I'm using the divorce as a windfall. On the STBX front, there's no news there. We will likely need to go to family court for a separation order since he won't agree to the financial details of the separation agreement my lawyer has drafted. My state requires a 1-year separation period before a divorce can be finalized, so this is going to be a long process. A few people ask why he did what he did and if he's offered any kind of explanation or justification. We haven't really talked since he was served. I don't know if he just fell out of love but I was still financially convenient, or if the mask finally lifted, or if it was being so close to his family and them having opportunities to manipulate him. I don't know and I don't care. I don't need closure, I need them all gone. Looking back, making promises during couples counseling and slowly regressing back is enough closure. Knowing he allowed his family to treat me like crap for so long is closure. That final betrayal at Christmas is closure. My focus isn't on figuring it out, it's making sure I'm happy.